Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm in Ashburn, everyone. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday to you. Hello, Callow. How are you?
How's it going? How was that press conference? An hour long. That's a record.
He's chatty.
That's a record.
He's chatty.
For the new regime, that's a long one. That's a long one.
Yeah, they let that one go. They let follow-ups occur. They were moving on, and he's chatty. He's very, very, very chatty. So let me just ask you this, because as you know, I'm going to fall for everybody because I just want them to win, and I'm happy. How'd he sound to you? How'd he come out? Give me first impression. What do you think? You feel bad? Because like, honestly, like, I think we all know that half the storyline here is that this didn't land properly with everybody in the fan base. So I'm not afraid of the elephant in the room, and I'll talk about it. But what did you think? What was your first impression?
Much more put together. I know, like, no offense to Ron, but just hearing Ron for 4 years now, you get used to that voice a little bit, and just hearing him, it just sounded much more buttoned up, not as much rambling.
Not vague.
Yes, correct. Very detailed. Also, like, the detailed questions he did not shy away from, and even said, like, good question, and actually answered it, in a good way. And, I think the one everyone is walking away with this from is, I like to do hard you-know-what with good people. I think that is the quote of the day. That's the one that's going to get printed on T-shirts probably and handed around the building. That was the best quote. I did have to laugh. I'm not going to knock him too hard. He said he loved the "be where your feet are" quote, which is like Ron said that, Bieniemy said that. So there's a little deja vu, a little flashback happening on that one, but that was okay. Very well put together. And you know what? Shocker, all of the reports kind of confirmed what he said there, is that he wanted another shot, that he did want to come here, that he thought this was the fit, that it would work. And it's kind of like, gee, imagine that. All the things that were being put out there did play out in front of us right away. And no, overall impression, very good. But as you know, I am very cautiously optimistic. He nailed the press conference. Let's see what he does come September. So we'll see.
Yeah, my favorite moment was Adam Peters admitted when I first called him to tell him he had the job, he didn't pick up the phone, and he said, "Well, I had to hold out on you a little bit. You made me wait long enough." So I actually appreciated that he wasn't sitting there like, the nervous, I'm waiting for my date to call me, I don't want to get ghosted. So I loved that part of it.
That was pretty good.
Asked, what is your team going to be like? And you typically get these very vague answers. That's not what he said.
Yep.
He said, I want to be explosive and physical. You couldn't. He said, we want to build from the inside out. He hit literally every high note, that I could possibly want, at least initially. We're going to be explosive. He did address the rebuild thing. I want to talk about that for a second, because he was asked, is this a rebuild? And he said, your words to that.
Yep.
And he said, I'm going to call this recalibrate. Here's what I would say to the word rebuild in general. It does not exist in the NFL anymore. That does not exist. You can turn around and be competitive very quickly in the NFL.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can turn around and be a Super Bowl team overnight in the NFL. The Texans, the Colts, for that matter, are very good examples. The Colts didn't make the playoffs, but could have, picked a rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterback barely played, had a new coach, and they recalibrated, and they were, until week 18, had a shot to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Texans did make the playoffs this year. The Jaguars did immediately change the coach. So I'm with this. I don't want to hear it. I think it was funny, you mentioned Rivera, and again, I'm also like you. I'm kind of at 4:00. I want to talk about this. It's time to move on from a lot of the past, really. I just because I heard what Doug Williams said, and I know what Ben Johnson's putting out there, and I know the mudslinging that's happening there.
Yep.
And I just want to move forward, and I think it's just better for everybody in the organization to not engage in any of that anymore. So I say this, with all due respect to Rivera, because I want to just kind of move on and let it go. But he touched on so many things that Rivera did not.
Yes. Yes.
And he really did. He really did. He touched on so many things that Rivera did not. And I think part of it was, I'm not sure Rivera was a great communicator, so that's kind of part of it. Part of the job is being able to communicate with us without, fear of giving up too much and And I don't know. I've never been in the positions I don't know. But I will say that while I think Rivera was a really good coach, and I did think he knew what he was doing, when he got in front of us, he didn't communicate particularly well. And this was refreshing again to hear somebody clearly communicate what they want to do. Let's see if it happens.
Yep.
And to talk about collaboration again. So this is now the third person. We've had the owner come in and say, we want to build an organization not only that you're proud of, but everybody's going to have their roles. They're going to be allowed to do their roles, but we're all going to be in lockstep, of which they hire a GM who has this incredible reputation, albeit it's a first time for him to do this job, says all the same things. This is what I want. I want to work in lockstep with people, and I want them to do their jobs. We're going to lean on one another. And then we brought in a coach who said, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I want to do exactly what I've been hired to do. This is where I want to be. I want my feet to be in the meeting rooms every single day. And I will give my opinion to Adam Peters. And Peters says, I will take your opinion. Please do so. But it was refreshing to hear that everybody's where they're supposed to be. Now, is this going to work? I have no idea.
Sure.
Like any other hiring, I have no idea. There have been times where they've hired, extraordinary winners like Mike Shanahan and Marty Schottenheimer and Joe Gibbs, and none of them brought us a Super Bowl. So they also were under a different regime. So I don't really, I don't want to, I'm like you, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I'm always lean towards being very optimistic about all of these things because I just want them to win. I do feel like they're in a better place, but I'm hearing the right things. I really am. I'm hearing the right things. Everybody seems to know what their jobs are. They seem to want to be doing their jobs alone. They want to work together.
Yep.
All of them seem to understand what the organization means. We have local owners again. They care about this. Obviously, that didn't matter with the previous owner, so I don't want to get too crazy about that, but it does matter. He does know. Hearing him go over and over, I'm from New Jersey. I know what the NFC East is. I'm fully aware, I grew up same time like me when all these teams were great, and this was football, the NFC East, and those Giants-Redskins games were something back then when it was Gibbs and Parcells, and I've always wanted to be a part of something like this, and obviously, he comes from Dallas, so he's intimately aware of the competition in the division right now.
Yeah.
To the GM who says, I want to be part of this too. Like, I want to build this here. I know what this franchise is. I know what the legacy is. Like, boy, I mean, if it was talking points, whoever put the talking points in front of them is amazing. And if it's just true, brutal honesty from all of them, just talking and giving their feelings, it was a home run. It's been a home run, and I know that of this decision, this is not the one that everybody all of a sudden was like, yeah, let's go. But I'm hoping after hearing that press conference that you feel a little differently because this was a very clear communicator who hit on so many things that I want to hear. Let's recalibrate. Let's become a physical team. Let's become a team that is an explosive team. Let's be a fun team to watch. Let's get everybody to buy into the same vision. Let's all go in the same direction. And if he gets that to happen, and this team collectively plays the way Dallas's defense has played the last few years, we are going to have a fun, competitive team again. And hopefully we do have a really good atmosphere. And hopefully we really do have a place where people want to come play, be part of the vision, whatever the strategy is, because we haven't had that in a long time. We really haven't. And I'm hoping he's the right guy for the job because that's who we got. And I'm hoping it ends up being the right thing.
I'll chime in on 2 points that you haven't gotten to yet. One of them was the lack of, or basically no questions on his former spot, Dallas. Like, there wasn't a lot of chatter or talk or whatever on that. So that was one where I was actually a little surprised, especially with how much he was talking. So he didn't say too much there. So that was one point that I thought wasn't brought up. But I'm sure, there is plenty of time in the offseason to probably get the behind the scenes on that one. The other one that made me excited, though, was when he was talking about Joe Whitt Jr. And he went detailed into tackling and being physical. And if there's two things I think this team has lacked in the last 2 years, I would say, like 2.5 years, their tackling has been atrocious. And especially over the last half of this past season, that was maybe the most frustrating thing to watch with this team. And the fact that he said that is like a sticking point with Joe Whitt Jr., that makes me excited for this defense because the fundamentals got away from them in the last couple of seasons, really. Like, I feel like they weren't terrible in the first couple years of Rivera, but then as things deteriorated, it seems like those deteriorated as well. So that was also exciting to have him bring that up and basically say we are going to be practicing that and they are going to be good at it because that is a major part of the defense. So they were saying all the right things, but it's more the detailed stuff that I was also very excited about because I feel like it is usually generalities. It was not today. It was pretty detailed.
It wasn't.
I mean, it went an hour for a reason. He was answering every question.
It was very detailed. All right, let me take a quick break. We'll keep reacting to Dan Quinn's introductory press conference next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I'm live in Ashburn, just coming out of Dan Quinn's introductory press conference as the 31st head coach in Washington football history. Let me get into a few other of the really takeaways from it. He spoke for about an hour, took every question. Quite talkative. He was chatty. Yep. He was ready to share his life with everybody today. I like this too. It wasn't specifically brought up in the context of, this is your second go around or you're a retread, which is not a nice word to use for it. But sure. That's, I think that's part of, I think why this didn't exactly land because it just didn't fit the profile, what I think the fans thought they were going to get. But he did say this, and it really stood out to me about, he really went into great detail about how he did a ton of self-reflection after Atlanta. He went on, he mentioned it multiple times.
Yep.
And not prompted, just basically said, after it ended, I was hell-bent and determined to get another shot, but I would evolve with all of it. And he described it as I did a full 360 of looking at everything that I've done. He was asked specifically about schematics, and he talked a little bit about, evolving. I don't think he wants to give up too much of that, but evolving through the time as the game kind of changes, but said that he has taken a tremendous amount of introspection into what was going right and then obviously what went wrong, that he wanted to do this again. And the quote that I wrote down after he said this is, "I'm a better version of me today than I was in Atlanta," which is another, you know what? Like, haven't we all been there before? Like, we've had something we wanted. It might not have gone the way we ever exactly envisioned, albeit, I mean, no one's going to call his tenure there a failure. He coached in a Super Bowl, but the end wasn't very good, and he was out in the middle of a season. And he clearly, envisioned having much more success as a head coach in the league. He was hell-bent and determined to do it again. But to hear him then say, I was depressed and I was pissed off and I was all these things and I had to kind of go through it to build my career back up. But I'm a better version today than I was before was a very reassuring thing because it was like, hey, not everything I did was right the first time. It's why my record was what it was, and I'm determined for it to be different. And again, none of it means it's going to be, but that hit a high note for me too, hearing it. Because, in a lot of cases, guys come in and they go, I have all the answers. Well, why aren't you in the same place you were then?
Right.
What I mean? Like, what, like, you'd be Belichick. You'd be there for 25 years if you had all the answers. They don't fire people who are winning all the time. And, well, in one exception, Jim Harbaugh. But in most cases, the people who are winning all the time have a very long run in one place. He did not. He was winning early. It kind of ended for a lot of reasons. But he basically took that upon himself to make himself better and said, I'm evolving and I'm a better person and I'm a better leader and I know what I don't want to do anymore and what I do want to do. I think Ron kind of admitted that by the end where he was like, I was a manager. I should have been a coach. Maybe the personnel thing was a little too much. I was dealing with things I shouldn't have been dealing with. Dan Quinn seemed to have learned some of that in Atlanta. And that one hit a high note for me too. Hearing him basically say, I've evolved and this is why I believe my second go around is going to go differently and more consistently and be better. And you know what? As the voice of the team, I hope he's right. As for fans of the team, I hope he's right. But it really hit one for me too. It felt very human to say, I had this dream gig. It was going okay. It didn't go as well as I wanted to. Now I'm getting a second chance. I realize how hard it is to get that second chance, and I'm different now, and I'm better for it. And that one really hit for me, too.
I was glad he did not shy away from the past because that wasn't the only time either. He actually went into detail of why he liked hiring Kyle Shanahan and why he's bringing in Kingsbury. And I think that's where, I think that was where everyone was kind of hanging their head up on saying, all right, well, if Quinn comes in, where's the offensive coordinator? And we all kind of said, when he lost Shanahan, it wasn't that good after that. But here it is. He went with the reasoning for Kingsbury. And on that point, too, of just saying, of him saying, like, I had to go through some of that stuff and I had to figure it out. I don't want to sound like the bitter ex-fan over here, but Ron Rivera did not ever shy away from telling us how much he knew or how much of an expert he was at certain things. And this one just finally felt like, I don't know, it felt like he was taking a knee next to everybody, not standing above them the entire time of this press conference.
That's right.
It was very much a I don't know if he was talked through it beforehand, but it did definitely feel like it was like, you're going to have to level with people here a little bit because you cannot do what Ron did last time. And you also know that you have some skeptics here. Be a little more human. And that's honestly, I think, all anyone ever wants with these head coaches is be human in some moments. You don't have to do it all the time, but be human in the moments that where people are really going to take it into account. The other one, too, which I don't think you've mentioned yet, is when he said to players want to be coached. They want to be told what they have to do to be great.
Yes.
I felt like we didn't have enough of that. Last era, it was a lot of taking shots at the media or making those passive-aggressive comments in training camp of either calming people down or hyping them up. And it was like, no, it sounds like when he sees something, he's going to go directly at it, nip it in the butt right away. And once again, it was all very, very refreshing. It was a great palate cleanser of a coach's presser.
It also, I loved the line where he said, Matt Ryan told me after I was there for a year, I felt like I was traded even though I was going into the same building.
Great line.
And I mean, I really hope that Terry McLaurin feels that way. John Allen feels that way. Deron Payne feels that way. Cam Curl, if he's back, feels that way. Jahan Dotson. Yep. He did mention how much he likes our receivers here. So if you want to be reassured about, certain players like Terry, I don't think that he wants to move away from anything like that. So that was very reassuring. And I do want to point out, I did see this over the weekend that John Allen showed up at the event with the other stations and did say that he feels differently about being here. And so having speculated about what his feelings are and the way he kind of conducted himself, especially late second half of the season last year, where he more than put out there that he was interested in pursuing potential other opportunities.
Yep.
That was nice to hear him say that. So I want to publicly say, I saw you said that. This is all I wanted to hear. I wanted to know, have you talked to new leadership? How do you feel about it? And I'm open to, we don't have hostages. If you don't want to be here, don't want to be here. But it sounds like off of the clips from that event that he attended the other night that he's changed his mind, calmed down, and would like to do it here. And that's good news because of the two things that Dan Quinn pointed out about this roster when he did this press conference, he said the receivers and the 2D linemen.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming Dan Quinn is going, I don't think he's going anywhere because he was like, he name checked 4 people. He's one of them basically. So it sounds like that all's well that ends well with John and everything should be okay 100%. On the up and up as we move forward. All right, take a quick break. Bram Bush Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back live. I'm in Ashburn today at the Commanders training facility as Dan Quinn was introduced as the 31st head coach of the Washington Commanders franchise today. He spoke for about an hour, flanked by the primary owner, Josh Harris, and the new general manager, Adam Peters, up on a dais. They took questions for over an hour. Mitchell Rales was here. Mark Guyon was here. Rick Spielman, who was part of the search committee, was also here today. I'm trying to think. Who else was in the crowd that I noticed that was... that was about it. Mark Guyon and Mitchell. Yeah, I didn't see too many others. I did not see any players, actually. I was actually a bit surprised. I did not see any players. The newsworthy thing that happened today from the press conference was, and this is not a surprise because Kliff Kingsbury was hired as the offensive coordinator, which I'll get into now, is that Eric Bieniemy will not be back as part of the staff. That is not a surprise, obviously. What was very interesting was I don't think we knew how much time his contract, no one ever really disclosed how long his contract was when he signed it a year ago. As it turns out, it was 2 years. I was under the impression it was actually only for 1, but I guess it was for 2. So they did interview him for the head coaching position. And then after Dan Quinn was hired, he did have a conversation with him, and he did announce today that Bieniemy will not be back. For those of you who follow this closely, I don't think anyone is surprised by this. It was oil and water with a number of the players this year. So, is Eric a very good coach? I think he is. I watched him work. I think he was a very hardcore head coach. I think he was a very no-nonsense head coach. I think he was not a very collaborative head coach or assistant coach or offensive coordinator. And that doesn't sound like the vibe of Dan Quinn, honestly.
Right.
So even if he really liked Eric or the job he was doing last year, or maybe thought, hey, like us in the media aren't seeing this as clearly as maybe he was because he competed directly against our offense a couple of times and watched them throughout the year. Even if he felt that way, I think it would be a hard sell to the players to bring him back. And so I'm not surprised today. And I wish Eric the best because, I'll reiterate, like, I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's a very good coach. I think he needs to be in the right place, at the right time. And I think that's a lot of things, like it's not just whether you can get the job done. You got to be in the right place where it supports you that way. And I just don't feel like the vibe that I got listening to Dan Quinn today about how he wants everybody to be kind of on the same page, passionate, seeing this vision. Well, all I know was last year, all these players were going to the previous head coach complaining about this guy.
Right.
So I don't really see how that ever would have fit and worked. And so it's probably better so for everybody to wipe the slate clean. So that happened today. And then, and obviously it was clearly going to happen because he was not going to be demoted under Kliff Kingsbury,
right.
Who comes in as the offensive coordinator here. And in the last, few days, by Friday, we had a rumor it might be Chip Kelly. Then all of a sudden, Kingsbury, who was earmarked to go to the Raiders, suddenly dropped out of that. Whether he did that because Dan Quinn called and said, we want to talk to you, or whether he did that because things just fell through with the Raiders, or whether he did that because it kind of leads you in a direction. It's hard not to speculate what that means, by him coming here. We bring him in. And so let me just start there because Quinn went on and on about what kind of coach he is and how he was hard to scheme against and how he has a lot of respect for him. And he also obviously has very good relationships with high-level quarterbacks. He coached Pat Mahomes. He coached Kyler Murray. He coached Caleb Williams. I don't think it's a leap, and I don't think it's unfair to speculate that this hiring has something to do with the draft. And I don't know anybody who can not come to the same conclusion that it's distinctly possible that Caleb Williams is potentially going to come here. And I've been on the record a number of times. I really do hope that happens. And this hiring the other day or last night when I saw it, I went, oh my God, like this might really be in play. And so, unless I'm told otherwise.
Yep.
And they're never going to admit that right now, but I don't know how you don't connect those dots and say, I think that might actually really be in play right now.
For sure. I would also just say too, though, look at how, because we had said about Chip, I want to bring back to Chip Kelly for just a sec. We had said, oh, you hire Chip Kelly. That kind of screams Jaden Daniels, right? Because mobile quarterback, same skill set. That's the type of guy like the Oregon offense,
not
runs.
Drake May.
Yeah, correct.
Not Drake May.
Yeah. And to bring it into Kliff, yes, you absolutely can and should speculate about Caleb Williams, but I think once again you don't throw Jaden Daniels, you don't take him off the table because he also fits in what Kingsbury did in Arizona with Kyler Murray. So I would just say, like, you're right, not Drake May is the vibe I'm getting at right now. I could see them going with either one. I would say though, you back out of Chip Kelly to go Kliff. It does lean to me that you are going to go Caleb Williams here or try to move up and try to acquire.
It's on the table.
Yes,
it's beyond on the table. He worked
100%.
directly with him.
Yes.
If he had a bad relationship with him, you wouldn't hire him in this spot.
And,
for both reasons. One, like if you were interested in having him and he didn't like working with him, you wouldn't bring him in. But also, if he had a bad relationship with this high-level quarterback, that would be a demerit on him. So to me, this just validates that clearly that's in play now, and that should be widely speculated, and it's not unfair to not speculate it. I think it is. And Adam Peters was asked about quarterback and wisely said, we haven't even started thinking about it, which can't possibly be true, but whatever. I mean, that's fine. What he doesn't need to answer that. I'm big on this, you don't need to answer questions you don't need to answer. That was one of my chief complaints about Ron throughout the 4 years was stop answering questions that you do not need to answer. You don't need to answer everything. Adam Peters was like, it's February. The draft's a ways away. We just hired a coach. We have other things to do. I'll get to that. And I don't need to tell you everything I'm thinking all the time. So it's the right answer not to answer it. But I know what this means. We all know what this means. They're calling Chicago. Of course they are.
Yeah.
How are they not? How are they not doing that right now?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's rampant speculation. Also, I would say this too, though. With Quinn's attitude of, hey, this is my second time around. I know what it takes. I would have to think there's a reason why they went and tried to get Kingsbury because of that reason too. He's probably thinking, dude, you were head coach last time around. You're just going to be the coordinator this time around. You already know what works and what doesn't work, how you want to communicate, and there's going to be way less on your plate. Like, I think the way Quinn handled himself should make you more excited about how Kingsbury handles himself coming here as well, because it seems like this is like, it's a little bit land of misfit toys a little bit. It's like, hey, we all screwed up on our first go around. Let's try to do this thing the second time, around. That's that's without counting Joe Whitt Jr., because I don't think he's been a defensive coordinator before. At least I don't think he has. So
no, he hasn't. This will be his first time. He's been an assistant coach. This will be his first time being a defensive coordinator.
So the good part about that too is, you know what? Like, Quinn's gonna tell him what he expects and how some of this works as well. So yeah, I mean, I just really like it seems like everything is meshing really well together, and it's new. It's not just, this isn't the Commanders all over again. You're bringing all the former people over from Carolina. Quinn has actually gone ahead and basically has a brand new regime and is not holding over a bunch of things that he had in Atlanta and only bringing a few things over from Dallas. It's really exciting, actually, when you look at the grand scheme of it all.
I mean, I expect, 'cause every coach does this. They'll bring a couple players with them, so we may get a couple of free agent Cowboys. Like, I'm not. I expect a couple of free agent Cowboys to come here. Like, I full on expect that to happen because they're comfortable with him and because we do need some upgrades at certain spots, on our team. The one spot that I don't love is obviously we need help at linebacker. And that was actually, I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it a weakness on their team, but that was a void on Dallas too. So it's not like there's a linebacker there that I could see poaching. Yeah. That said, the person who should be really pumped about this is Emmanuel Forbes. I mean, like, he should be really, really, really excited about this because what Dan Quinn and Whitt have been able to do in Dallas is turn these corners into ball harking, play like turnover machines. And that's why we drafted this guy. That's the reason why we drafted this guy. So of all people that should be psyched about the do-over, it's him because he had a rough first year. It might have been him. It might have been his stature. It might have been a lot of things. It might have been the coaching too. It might have been the scheme that he was placed in. These guys have been able to find ways to make these corners. Like, think about this back-to-back years. Diggs had the most interceptions in a season of any Cowboys corner, and the next year, Deron Bland broke a record for pick sixes in a single season. Like, that happened in back-to-back years. The person who should be pumped about this is Emmanuel Forbes, because we're going to find out if he can play or not, because if he doesn't cut it with this particular group of coaches, then he turns out to be however you want to characterize him. But I bet they're going to get the most out of him. Watch. Like, whether he's the one corner, the two corner, whatever it is, the number one, number two, doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But I bet you're going to find out. We're going to find out what he's about and whether that was a good or bad draft pick now. Right. Because that's what these guys have done particularly well. This defensive coordinator has specialized in turnovers by a secondary. So that's why we drafted this guy. That's why we drafted this guy. So let's see.
I think that was the best part, too. Like, I think we all kind of knew that last year, that it was like, well, we're just going to see what Forbes does with the next crew because it's clearly not working out with this one. And, like, you're not just going to cut a dude a year after you draft him anyways.
No, of course not.
I knew that, though, the second they brought in Quinn. I was like, okay, cool. That guy has had two different ball-hogging corners when, Diggs went down earlier this year, as you just said, that is clearly a part of what he likes to do is get pressure and have these guys jump routes. Yes, I agree. Like, it does not seem like Forbes' career is down in the dumps as once thought. Yeah.
He should be pumped.
Yes, the talk of his demise was very overrated.
That's right. I mean, if Ben Johnson came in here, he might be like, let's see what happens. But, like, they brought in guys who specialize in his position. Yeah. So, like, so let's see how that goes. So, but I do, listen, it's every coach. Of course, there's going to be a couple of ex-Cowboys that show up here. Like that's going to happen. And then with Kingsbury, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple offensive players that he's accustomed to that pop in here. Yep. That's normal, right? That's all very normal. As for Kingsbury as a coach, obviously when I saw, that they hired him, it's eyes wide open I think it's on for Caleb Williams. Like, it doesn't mean we're going to get him, but it's on.
Yeah.
But as for him as a coach, like, listen, like, don't play the tapes of me talking about him a few years ago because,
Cliffy.
my boy Cliffy, who I talked about, who I see, like, who I think the running gag was, we're going to find out if he can coach in December, because they did the same thing every year. They'd kind of come out of the gate. They were very hard to stop. Things would kind of settle into the season. Teams kind of mature throughout the year. They learn about each other. Things change. And in that second go around, like in baseball, once they get around to the lineup the second and third time, things are a little bit different. And it seemed to happen to them where it went the wrong way. And I think it was hard to know, is that the coaching? Is that Kyler? Like, we don't know. No one really ever really knows. But him as a coach, in terms of creativity, I loved him. I thought he was great. Like, I thought he was an outstanding coach. But what was hard to know was late in the season, was it him? Was it Kyler? What was it? What was it that they would nosedive when the games got tough late in the season? And, when I get a chance, I'd love to ask him about his experience, being a head coach there, and see what kind of truth-telling he would tell about those times, because they did have really good teams. They did make the playoffs that one time late in his, the couple years, the year before he got fired, they got to the playoffs, but that was the game Kyler was terrible, in that playoff game, and they fell apart, and they fell apart. So I don't know. So I'll be interested to hear it from him too. Like, he may have a similar story like Quinn did, like hey, I had to reinvent myself too. I mean, so I don't, I'm waiting to hear from him. And I also want to hear what it was like going to Thailand after he was fired with his girlfriend. I'd like to hear that one too.
More importantly, does he still have the house in Arizona? I think that's a very important question.
That's a very good question. That is a big question.
I mean, that was in a magazine, man. You don't just throw that away. And not to mention, that could just be the retirement home. You just rent it out. So I think that is a really important question of whether he's still got that or not.
Now that Kingsbury's here and obviously the link is being made to Caleb, you just have to start asking all of the questions, because, we were at number 2, so it was always on the table that it was possible that we would take him one way or the other, whether that's trading up with Chicago or Chicago surprisingly not taking him, or Chicago surprisingly trading the pick and the team who takes that pick doesn't pick him. Like, it was always on the table.
Yep.
But, here's the interesting part of Chicago. Here's all the questions. One, let's say they do trade with us. Everyone assumes if they traded with us, well, they can move down and take best tackle off the board. They could take Marvin Harrison Jr. They could do, there's a lot of things they could do. What if they traded down with us and took a quarterback? That would be unbelievable, right? Who's to say that they wouldn't move to 2, take the assets, and take Drake May?
Yeah, of course.
Like, who's to say they wouldn't do that?
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely.
Which also would be the all-time, if you're Caleb Williams, you go, I hate you for the rest of my life that you actually did that. If you trade down one spot and take Marvin Harrison, all's well that ends well, you've decided to do that. If you trade down one spot to get the assets and then take another quarterback, you have established the all-time rivalry of all-time rivalries, because you're basically saying, we didn't want you. We could have taken this other guy. We chose not to do it because we could just get assets. We wanted the other guy anyway. Oh, man, it's on with the Bears. Like, it's already now on with the Lions, honestly, and it's on with the Bears if that ends up happening too. And as you know, I want you. You're like me. I want the vinegar. I want all the things that make this stuff fun. I want all of it. So in the purest, like, I hate you world, I want the Bears to trade with us, allow us to take Caleb Williams, and then they take another quarterback, and then we get to hate them for the rest of time because they get compared to one another forever. And then we get to go to Detroit, and we get to get this offensive coordinator who made our week hell last week. I can't wait.
It's got to make you feel good if that does happen, because the Bears it's kind of like rocking a hard place. The Bears never seemingly get this right. Our team seemingly never gets it right. Like, something has to give if that does indeed happen. Like, hopefully it wouldn't be both of them being wrong. That would be the worst case scenario, but I'm kind of with you. Like, that would be an amazing storyline. And then if, let's say, Caleb Williams is the real deal, you would then have the Bears who didn't draft Mahomes and were in a position to get Caleb Williams and didn't take either one of them. That would be maybe the funniest thing ever to happen with that franchise, that they would be passing on 2 generational type guys. I don't know if that's going to happen. I see them, if they do trade down, that they will actually take one of the non-quarterbacks, but you're right. You never know, and you never know who they actually really, really like.
That's right. And the biggest issue that Washington is going to contend with if they're trying to get Caleb Williams is maybe a few teams are going to come along with astronomical prices. I think we already know this. Like, the Raiders tried to hire Kingsbury. Gee, I wonder why.
Right.
Exactly. They're obviously eyeing moving up in the draft for one of the 3 quarterbacks. I think we already know Minnesota's going to do that. the New England is sitting a couple picks back and could be out of the running to get one of them, or maybe who knows? I mean, with Arizona at 3, they could trade out. The Patriots could move up. I mean, it could work out that the Cardinals trade back one spot and take Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right.
Like all those things could possibly happen. And so I think the deals that are going to be offered to Chicago are, I'm assuming, are going to be pretty hefty. And we're going to be banking on, but you're just moving down one spot and you get the guy you want plus extra assets, and then they're going to have to weigh that against getting 3-4 first round picks.
Right.
And it's going to be a tough one. So we'll see how it plays out. All right, I want to go over what Doug Williams said the other day, and we'll put a button on Ben Johnson, I guess, and keep talking about what Dan Quinn had to say today, which I thought was very, very impressive. Hit a lot of high notes today in his introductory press conference. Brett, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I'm live in Ashburn today. About an hour ago, Dan Quinn finished up his introductory press conference as the 31st head coach in Washington football history. He spoke for about an hour, flanked by the new general manager, Adam Peters, and the managing director and primary owner of the team, Josh Harris. They are, talking about the future and moving on from the past, and everything is new. Here's Dan Quinn looking to wipe slate clean with his head coaching resume. And here's Adam Peters' first chance to be a full general manager in the league. And here's Josh Harris, first full year, as the, let's be fair, they were hamstrung. I mean, yes, last season they owned the team, but what were they going to do once they had got it? This is first full year to put their fingerprints on the whole thing, and they're moving forward. So it all feels very fresh and new, to which, I think we've all lived. Every year is just a rigmarole with the past. And I'm ready to kind of wipe slate clean a little bit, because all these people that are here are new clean slate. And so I'd like to do that with them, and we'll see what happens. How's the organization run, inside and out? How does the team fare on the field? Let's be open-minded to all of that, because this is a whole new day.
Yep.
And which is why I want to stop getting caught up in the past. And I'm going to read what Doug Williams said in a moment, but let me just start with Ben Johnson, which I was a little surprised, and maybe just nobody wanted to outwardly ask about how awkward last week was, but it was. It was very awkward. Yeah. And there was an opportunity there for someone to ask the owner, who was sitting right there, what did you make of being called, mid-air that someone did not want to accept an interview with you anymore? And, I don't blame anybody for not wanting to ask that question, but I'm a little surprised it didn't happen today, a little bit. And then, I described this last week once, he pulled out when he pulled out. So it's his prerogative to not want the job. But when he pulled out, I thought it was unprofessional. And having dealt with, people of this level for a long time, they get offended, and I don't blame them. And, they're trying to change your life and you're telling him to turn the plane around. It's a mistake. I think his agent probably knows that too. It's a mistake. And I described that then as it's the Mr. Wonderful, you're dead to me moment, because it's one thing to gracefully say no, or say after the interview, I really want to appreciate this opportunity, but I'm not really sure I'm ready, to do something, but I really appreciate it. He didn't do that. And it was just a mistake. And so the I'm dead to you phase occurred. And I'm not surprised that they kind of leaked all the insiders. He blew his interview. Yep. And that's why he probably wasn't going to get the job anyway. And then came out this thing the other day on ESPN, I think it was Jenna Lane, and, he better deny this if he didn't say it, but she basically said that he described them as a bunch of basketball guys and was like, they don't know what they're talking about. To which I went, if that's true, okay, and I don't know that he said it, right? They're attributing this to him. If he did, and I want to say if he did, it is easily one of the dumbest things I've ever heard somebody in his position ever say. I get it. You are semi-offended that they are kind of putting out there, that maybe you didn't perform to the degree that you did, that you thought you might in those interviews. But considering how you offended them by not accepting the interview or telling them when you told them that you didn't want to accept the interview. You could have done that a week ago, 2 weeks ago. You could have done it the day before. You didn't have to do it when you did it. And it made them look bad. And if you can't understand that you made them look bad and there's going to be a price to pay for that, he should have kept his mouth shut. And I just can't believe he would say that, because if I'm, again, I say this to the players. They always say this to the players. Put your best stuff on film, whether it's for here or somewhere else. Put your best stuff on film. To these people who have career-driven goals, and I would like to think that Ben Johnson one day might want to be a head coach, albeit at this point, all evidence is he may not. But like, if he does, and he does have career aspirations, because most people who are in this profession, want to do that at some point. You would think saying that, if he really did say it, and it's is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard come out of the mouth of somebody in his position who's never done this before. These other owners, it's 2 years in a row that he pulled himself out of these cycles, in this case, not gracefully whatsoever, and you're going to dismiss one of the 32 owners and say they don't know what they're talking about? Wow, buddy. Like, you better watch it.
Yep.
Like, and this is just, again, professional advice, my friend. If you actually really want to be a head coach here, you do work for them. They're the ones that choose your destiny. And they also, like your coaching circles talk to one another, they talk to one another. It was easily one of the dumbest things I've ever read that someone in his position would say. So I don't know if he said it or not, but if he did, oh my God. Like, hey, I'm glad we didn't pick you if that's what you think. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I am glad you're not here if this is how you're talking about it.
What I find really funny about this is you can tell. Here's what's funny. Just because we have been in this market so long, and we always have to consider not only where it's coming from, but the why a lot of times. Like, why is this happening, right? Like, we've been traumatized by the Snyder era. We've been doing it for 20 years of you got to sniff out what's really happening here. What's funniest about this one is it is specified pot shots at the organization, and all I have to say is, why aren't you saying anything about the Seahawks?
That's right.
Because you did technically say you didn't want to be a head
coach. Same thing to them.
Yes, exactly. And so my whole theory is here, or not theory, but my whole thought process here is, wow, so you're just taking shots at one organization? Like, instead of just keeping your mouth shut, you're now clearly trying to divert everything. Oh, it's their fault. Like, it's their fault that I'm not going to head coach. They're just basketball people. Well, what do you think about the Seahawks people then? Because I bet you they're all not quote-unquote football people. Like, the owners are very rarely ever involved with football outside of being owners. So,
you know what's amazing?
Right.
Jody Allen, who owns the Seahawks, owns the Trailblazers.
Yes, yeah. The basketball people. Like, that's what I was just like. And I almost wondered, like, did you take a shot at Magic Johnson? Like, are you serious? Like, a very successful businessman in America?
Or Bob Myers?
Yeah, right.
Are you kidding?
Yes, right, exactly. I'm just kind of like, where do you get off on
He's
this?
one of the most successful executives in all of sports in the last 40 years, and you're taking a pot shot at him? You're taking a pot shot at Magic Johnson? You're taking a pot shot at Josh Harris? Are you stupid? It's really more like, are you kidding? And like, get out of your own head. Like, you think that's going to get you anywhere? Like,
right.
Had he not done what he did when he did it, none of this would have happened. None of it. Like, you have to just gracefully eat it sometimes on certain things. But the reality was they wanted to go meet him in person. And if they say, well, he wasn't definitively our first choice, maybe he wasn't, but clearly you didn't want to make a hire until you spoke to him in person. So let's just be real here for a minute. And so that's obvious that you really wanted to. It doesn't mean you were going to offer him the job, but and maybe he didn't do well in that first interview, and maybe that's why you wanted to go to him. Give him a second chance here before you made a final decision. By pulling out the way that he pulled out, unless there's something we just don't know, it just was an extraordinarily not well thought through, unprofessional thing to do. I know his agent knows this, and I know there's going to be other coaches going to tell him this. He's going to regret this. And if he never actually becomes a head coach, he's going to look back at this moment, because he's now done this twice. David Tepper wanted to hire him a year ago. He didn't want to take the interview. Pulled himself out. This year, multiple teams wanted to talk to him. He did the exact same thing. You're dead to them now.
Yep.
Like, you are. Like, I'm sorry, but you're not football Jesus. So you're not going to reinvent the game. So you're not going to come up with something that everybody just can't not have. So that, whatever. It's his life, and I don't want to tell him how to live his life. And if he's just happy being an offensive coordinator in Detroit, good for you. I don't have a problem with it, but you're going to regret this. You are. Like, and it was just a really stupid thing to do. And when I saw that quote, I'm like, oh, man, you're digging the hole deeper now. Because now the other owners are reading this, and they're going, oh, really? Stan Kroenke owns the Denver Nuggets. So,
That's right. Yeah.
David Tepper owns soccer team.
Yep.
You already, you burned them. Josh Harris owns a basketball team and a hockey team and a soccer team. All of these owners are Jody Allen owns the Portland Trailblazers. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think you know what you're doing when you do something like that. And you also are better served just keeping your mouth shut, honestly. And I wish, no ill will, dude, but like you did screw up the week for everybody. And as for Seattle, I will say this one thing about Seattle. They can lean on our first choice was McDonald the whole time and we got our first choice. And that may be true. And it at least perceptually reads as true to everybody. So did he do the same thing to them? Yes. Does it matter as much? No. It doesn't. Right. From a perception perspective, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
It was, just to use this in the post era, it was very Dan Snyder-esque. It was very knee-jerk reaction to try to throw someone under the bus, and then you realize that was kind of dumb because everyone's just gonna sniff out what happened there. Like that's exactly what happened. Like we're so used to it here that's why I said I think people just sniffed it out right away. The other part about it too is I don't know if you saw Schefter was on with McAfee today. And was asked about it and went
at him.
Yeah, went at him. Was like
the same way I'm going at him. Yeah. The second he did it, I'm like, "Are you kidding? You would do that? Like, what are you kidding?"
And Schefter said it was a text. It wasn't even a phone call, by the way. Which is have your debate on that one. I don't really. If you're out, you're out. Whatever. But the fact of the matter is that Schefter is a mouthpiece for a lot of people, for agents, but is a mouthpiece for the owners that we've seen and.
He's a newsmaker. Yes. He has relationships with agents too.
Correct.
He doesn't.
Correct. Right.
I saw McAfee kind of be like, "Oh, you're the mouthpiece for the owners," and Schefter was like, "Dude, I talk to everybody. I don't burn relationships with any of them."
Yeah. And say what you want about Schefter. We can usually sniff out who he's talking for, but Schefter does not go off on people lightly either, though. Like Schefter does pick and choose what he goes off on, and this was one where I was like, "Oh wow, we actually get we get bitter Schefter here," because I think even Schefter, it means that Schefter was hearing it from other people around the league, going, "Ooh, that's not a good."
I heard from people who were at the Senior Bowl because everybody was down there.
Yep.
That was going around. Like, can you believe that guy did that?
There you go. Yeah, that's all you need to know. Like that's all.
Yeah, can you believe it? And then, for Schefter, think about Schefter for a moment, who's touting, here's the hot names on the board, because that's who he's hearing from his insiders. So he's part of touting the hype of this guy.
That's right.
This guy does this. You think Schefter's going to tout his name anymore after this? Because the owners are like, who is this guy?
No shot.
I know. He made a mistake by not meeting with them.
Yep.
He should have met with them. And they could have, if they weren't going to hire him or he didn't actually want to take the job, they could have discussed that in person and they could have shook hands on it and they could have, both walked away and been like, time's not right for him and the time wasn't right for us, but it was great to meet him and leave his good name intact. But by doing what he did, I went, you're going to go Mr. Wonderful here. They're going to go, you're dead to me. And his agent needed to advise him at that point, don't say anything. They're going to take a swipe at you because you embarrassed them. So you're good. They're going to take a swipe at you.
Right.
Just take it, move on. Nobody will remember it in OTAs. By saying what he said, it's going to hang him because now he's taking shots at owners. Dude, you're not on sports radio with me, man. You need these people to give you jobs for your career aspirations. So are you dumb? What are you nuts? You cannot say things like that. It's ridiculous.
You're also just to finish up on it. You're also going after the brand new owner in the league for a storied franchise. The other owners aren't going to let that fly either. They want their ranks to be as strong as their weakest member is. So they're even going to go, yeah, that's not going to fly, pal. We're good on that.
No,
pass on that.
Of course not. Of course not. All right. So then there was this one, and I was really surprised to read this. So Doug Williams went on with Doc the other day.
Yep.
And was it on the radio or I think it was on the radio.
Yeah, it was on the radio. Yep, for the other station.
Right. And he said nice things about Dan Quinn, obviously.
Yep.
Said everybody says nice things about him. He met him. He goes, et cetera, et cetera. He was asked about Ron Rivera, and he said this. And Doug toes the party line. So I was really surprised to read this. But he said, We had the last regime that said he changed the culture.
Cannot possibly convince
Doc,
me.
you and I both know. I don't feel no culture change. Number one, the culture change comes when everybody's together and you find a way to win. That's culture. You can't go out the way we've gone out the last 3 years or so and say the culture's been changed. It has not been changed. Fortunately, I'm in there. I've been in there. I don't say much, but I look and I listen, and ain't a whole lot of change. Which. He's not wrong, okay?
Right.
I was just really surprised, especially from him, because there's nobody that waves the flag more than he does and has worked with this organization in basically an ambassador type role for a very long time now. Whether it's either helping in the front office or being part of the decision making, or now where he's, kind of a community relations, everybody loves Doug.
Yes.
How could you not love, everybody loves Doug. I was really surprised that he took a shot at Rivera on the way out. Not that anything he said was controversial or necessarily wrong. It was just interesting to hear him say it.
Here's what my theory was on that one. By the way, Doug great at everything he's done with this organization. Like I always like to point out, Doug was the one that got Adrian Peterson here on the year Alex Smith got hurt, and Peterson was great here. And what I read on that was just connecting all of the dots from what you've talked about, what I've heard, what Keim has talked about. Everybody was one of the things that you told me that like right away. Ron insulated himself, right? He had a small inner circle,
100%,
right? And it ended up biting him in the end, right? But my
badly,
guess, right. But my guess,
I understood why he did it early. He needed to open the door up once he started getting the trust of people, and he never did that. It was one of the big mistakes that he made, for sure.
And that's what I'm guessing this is from. I'm guessing Doug probably tried to help Ron every step of the way, or kept extending the olive branch, and Ron just assumed, Doug, part of the old regime. I don't need to, listen to him or do anything or whatever. But it also just personally for them aside, like I said, I'm just guessing there. I'm not reporting anything. I'm going to guess here too is, you know what? Like you've mentioned it on the air too. Not everybody in that building was pulling on the same rope.
Correct.
And culturally,
that's been that way for 25 years here, which
sure.
is what it pick the coach, pick the regime, but it included this last one for sure.
Well, and like what Ron can't take credit for though is getting all of the new voices and new people in the building, because they were all kind of cleared out that first summer anyways because of all the allegations and all of the other stuff that came out. So Ron can't really take credit for building a new culture and bringing in all these new people when they had to bring in new people is what I'm getting at. And so my guess here is Doug saw it day to day and was kind of like, this dude, he's a good guy, but I don't see it, and I don't see him uniting everybody. I don't see him, doing what he needs to do for what he's in charge for too. This all goes back to Ron just had so much on his plate. How was he going to fix it all? It's impossible. But for Doug to just come out and say he did not change anything, it tells you how much this last year really deteriorated too. I think that's really what it came down to as well. You and I have talked about it a million times on the air now at this point, that you can say you built a better culture, but the second you're only winning 4 games and all the players are going crazy, it's all gone back to ground zero all over again, essentially. You didn't build anything when it gets that bad.
I just I think like today, I thought Dan Quinn did a very nice job. I thought he was very eloquent. I thought he was very clear. I thought he was very passionate, and I thought he was very introspective. And whether you agree with the hiring or not, and I know there were a lot of people that didn't love the hiring last week, and because I think they envisioned something else happening, and it didn't. And he doesn't fall into the category, I think, of what people expected. Younger offense, like that didn't happen. All right, okay, fine. But like after hearing what he had to say. And then reading this stuff over the weekend from, let's put Ben Johnson in the past. He's not our head coach. And frankly, after what he did, he never will be.
Yeah.
Not with this ownership. Forget it. He's done. You're dead to me. He's done. And then just reading what Doug said, and I'm not saying Doug's wrong for saying it. I was just surprised to hear him say it. I think it's just time for us. I was watching this, for an hour watching them, and I'm going, we've got to get out of the past. We've just got to move on. And I know the Ben Johnson thing's brand new and was fresh and was weird, so it was worth debating and talking about for sure. But here we are, new week. Let's move on. And I think this goes back to a lot of things that I've talked about here, just being part of the organization, being around it for so many years and loving it as a fan growing up around here. We need to get everybody on the same page to stop worrying about all this nonsense. We need everybody on board with the same idea, working together for the same goals. And we just need to put all this mishigas and nonsense somewhere else. Let somebody else have it. Like, that clearly is happening in other places now. We've lived it. Let them have it and deal with it for a while. Can we just all get on the same page, start rowing the boat the same way again? And that's when we'll have a chance to win. Because, like, when Dan Quinn was asked today, what's your timeline for, being competitive, which I thought was an unfair question. You don't even know what his roster looks like at this point. Like,
that's right.
There's so many guys not under contract. Like, I don't even know what his roster looks like. So I even refuse to answer a question like that at this point, because I'm like, show me what the team is in the summer, and then I can give you a better feeling of, do I think that they have a chance to be competitive or not? Like, because I just don't know what the roster looks like. Yep. But once we get there, we can do that. But the most important thing that can happen, and I thought he touched on this today, he was like, because he said, like, what's the marker of success for you? If we can get everybody in this building believing that they can trust one another, that they're going to play with the type of passion and intensity that we're looking for, that we work together towards those goals, then we'll have achieved something, and we'll see what the record is. Like, it's football. It's hard to win. We'll see what the record is. That was the perfect answer. It's exactly what I want here. Can we just get everybody on the same page, rowing the boat the same way, and then the chips will fall where they may when we have a roster we can win with? Period.
Yep.
That's how I feel about it.
Yep.